Is the Black church relevant still to the Black community? That's the topic of discussion this morning with the Reverend Derek Arnold, the Reverend Donald Perryman, and the Reverend Calvin Sweeney. Again, welcome back, and thank you for everything you said this morning. I appreciate your honesty. I appreciate your candor. You were saying, Reverend Arnold, that pastors will put those issues on the pulpit that they have a passion for, but shouldn't they have a passion for all these things that we're talking about today?
Well, you would hope so. That would be the issue. But again, it's a personal thing, and I have a personal a passion for all those issues as far as dealing with the wholeness of individual, whether you're male or female or a child.
Do you think that part of I want to talk about for a second the influence that white religious organizations have had on Black churches. Part of the migration away from the Black church appears to be to churches that are growing at tremendous rates, like Cornerstones and like Cedar Creek, that has been identified as one of the fastest growing congregations in the nation, not just the city. What does that send any particular kind of message to you all? Does that say anything specific to you, Pastor?
Yeah, it does. It says, and I've had conversations with individuals, it says that there are things that they're looking for, maybe more practical and pragmatic than just spiritual, that other ministries are offering. And so in many of our churches, maybe there's not a children's ministry, but we live in communities that are primarily have a single mother head of the household. Mm-hmm. And so they're coming to church and they want to be able to get a message, but they're dealing with toddlers. And so I think we as a church, we have to begin to identify and survey, if you will, the needs that are in our community. But we do need resources. I mean, resources is an issue, and a lot of the churches in the Black community may not have the resources, the population of the people we serve. Maybe they can't bring the tithes and offering that more affluent churches have because of the people who attend their services. So there are needs that are in our community. We need to assess what they are, but then we too need resources, knowing that if these people in our community come to our churches, it still may not be enough finances there to do the children's ministries that's needed, or the singles ministry, or this ministry that the other churches can offer. It's kind of like the Walmart and the neighborhood store. At some point, you don't have the resources to provide all of those things, and so people are looking. We're in a day of people having options and choices, and so yeah.
Well, I think also it depends on, you mentioned Cornerstone and Cedar Creek. And I think it depends on what individuals are looking for when it comes to preaching. I mean, I see preaching that is relevant. You lift an ancient text and you make it applicable for today. And how does it speak to me today? Mm-hmm. In every facet of a person's life. Mm-hmm. A single mother, a drug addict, etc.
And back to the church's original mission, being founded out of social crisis, there are people whom we minister to that are not being spoken to. Their needs are not being addressed, and the Black church is uniquely situated to speak to their needs directly.
Right. You're right, and I would agree with that. And one of the things that I think is critically important, excuse me for pointing at you, one of the things that I think is critically important, the reason I think it's so very important to have your voices raised, is that everything that happens in our community has a direct impact on your ability to be effective. And I'll give you an example. When neighborhoods are allowed to decay, when people are losing their primary investments, their homes, when they are having to make the decision to stay in a central city neighborhood, and all of your churches are in what I call the central city anyway, then they're moving out. Guess what? On Sunday morning, it's like, am I really gonna drive that far back into there just to go to church when I can go to church over here? So your plates are diminished, your resources are diminished. That's why I am so adamant about the need for your voices to be so present in this political, in this economic conversations that we have in the city. Do you think that part of the confusion is also just a misunderstanding about what the church is all about? We talked before the show a little bit about Jeremiah Wright and the conversation around Trinity when Obama was running it was a pretty powerful conversation back then.
You know, I think if you take some of the sermons Jesus spoke and the issues he talked about, they're not much different, you know.
Absolutely.
And so I think we do need to be, the general population does need to be re-educated about what Christianity is, what, you know, the gospel is. And it is about justice. It is about telling truth to power and pointing that out and not being afraid to.
I love
And
that.
so-
The Bible
Telling
is
truth
the
to
Bible
power.
is a revolutionary message.
So when you go out, Pastor, and you're talking to the young kids, which I know you do all the time, what's their response to you when you're saying this is what real men look like? This is how real men behave. This is how Jesus would have had you respond. Are they responding in any way that says that they're getting that message?
Well, yes, they are, but I think it's in the approach and the method that you can't be looking down to them, and you've got to get their confidence and let you know that you have a shared experience to a degree, but you were able to rise above it. And I think the church has traditionally, enabled a safety net for young men. They could come to church and see somebody who has risen above poverty and been successful, and they can sit right next to that person and have them talk to them. And I think that's one of the benefits of the church right now.
And I believe they're listening. I had a young man who's about maybe 14, 15. His mother told me they went visiting another church, and the young man said he did not want to go back to that church because he did not understand the message, which says that whatever I'm preaching on Sunday, he understands it, he connects with it.
Mm-hmm. So we've got about 5 minutes left. What are the challenges that you face in terms of staying connected and remaining connected to our community?
I think one of the challenges is that the value systems of the day sometimes are in direct contradiction to the value systems that we preach from the pulpit, and the tendency to move from the mark to become quote unquote more relevant based upon the understanding of the day. So I think, you know, that's the challenge is one of our challenges is to continue to preach the truth and justice and mercy and love when values are shifting, becoming more hedonistic and self-serving and about profit and possessions over people and all of those type of things that everyone's embracing in today's society. And yet preach this more traditional value system, and traditional in terms of this country being founded upon certain values that were biblical, and yet preach them. And people may not want to hear that. People may want to hear, people have an itching ear to hear something, you know, that's exciting them, and maybe it's not really helpful to their spiritual and their soulish development.
So you're fighting popular culture. So from the time people leave our services on Sunday until they get back the next Sunday, we've had to deal with the media and what's on television and what their friends are saying and all of this. So that is a challenge.
That is a challenge. What do you think, Pastor?
I think being open-minded, keeping your hands on the pulse of the community and the needs of the community, and reinventing yourself. I think as ministers we have to reinvent ourselves in order to be relevant.
That's a really great point. How do you, though, reinvent yourself in light of what Pastor Sweeney says? I totally agree. In the time of cameras that take all kinds of pictures, most of which should not be taken to begin with, and in times of, you know, parents allowing their kids to watch TV, most of which, you know, should be censored, I think, for kids. How do you reinvent yourself?
I think
And still stay relevant to your own values.
well, having men like Pastor Perriman and Sweeney and others to hold me accountable, and we hold each other accountable, and we educate ourselves. You know, we stay in tune with what's going on in our churches, and from a community standpoint and nationwide.
We dialogue together quite a bit and hold each other accountable, and I think it's unique that we can have different theological perspectives and still come together for a common cause.
You agree?
I do agree, and I think you know, and we've heard this said before, the message doesn't change, but the way we package the message can change. and we should be open to doing that and looking for opportunities to do that, and stay abreast of what's going on in current news, and so that we can speak a relevant message with those tenets that our faith is based upon. And so therefore we give them the message in a relevant way. And I think that we can do that, and if we continue to have conversations and dialogue with one another, we can make sure we stay harnessed right where we need to be. So it's an unchanging gospel for a changing world.
We've got just a minute left. If in fact you had one sentence that you would tell people before you left that would make them understand the importance of coming to church, what would that be?
That coming to church would allow you to receive the love of God. And 1 Corinthians 8 says love builds up, and we all need to be built up.
Pastor?
Personal transformation should always lead to social transformation.
Okay.
And being open-minded to growing, to becoming what God would have you to become.
Thank you very much. Thank you all very much for joining me this morning. We'll be right back. Don't go away. Promise we'll be right back.